Now, hold on, guys. Wait. I may have the ability to add temporary modifiers to make adventures more interesting, but that's it. If I did anything more, trust me, it would not end well.
Scratch, the first abstraction.
What really happened to Scratch? Kane reveals Scratch to be the first member to abstract, and while saddening, Kane would have no reason to be worried here. But he is. It's already been revealed that Kane can control their minds, so why does Kane panic at the mention of Scratch's name? What is he hiding? In fact, when I looked back over the series, I started to notice something very odd about Kane's behavior, as well as some very interesting information about Kinga, information that would recontextualize everything about the digital circus, and whether or not they can escape. Get ready, sit back and relax, because this is the Amazing Digital Circus Abstraction Theory. Getting into a piece of media like The Amazing Digital Circus provokes a lot of conversation, and it's easy to see why. With well-written characters and intriguing world building, it becomes very easy to want to analyze why characters like Kane act the way they do, and the motives behind them. The intrigue that The Amazing Digital Circus creates discussion from is around one core mystery. Will they ever escape? I think in order to figure this out, we have to look at the characters and ask why they act the way they do. Characters like Pomni, Jax, or Zubul provide interesting commentary on dealing with being trapped in the digital world, but no other character seems to be more involved with the narrative of the digital circus than Kinga, and I believe understanding him will help us be able to make out where the story is headed. Speaking of, I'd like to take a moment to look back at episode 7, because both Kane and Kinga have an exchange that I couldn't quite shake off. Episode 7 revealed that Kane was able to control the cast's mind the entire time.
You can mess with our minds too, can't you? The stupid sauce, the vegan thing, God knows what else!
Our names?
In return, Kane tells them he can only temporarily modify their memories. But when Kinga mentions Scratch, it leads to this reaction from Kane.
Hey! I didn't say anything like that! Come on, guys! You know I'm just here to have fun.
It was a moment very out of place even for someone like Kane. He had been taken off guard as if his own lies had just unraveled before him. I was trying to make sense of why Kane was so defensive here, how Kinga was able to remember Scratch despite being in a bright room, but more importantly, why Kane didn't want Kinga here to begin with. And when I went back over the entire series, I was listening to an episode when I heard a piece of dialogue so jarring, it's the main reason I started investigating for this video. In episode 3, when Kinga and Pomni eventually find themselves transported to hell during one of Kane's adventures, Pomni is struggling to mentally adjust to the hijinks happening around her in the circus. As Kinga tries to console her, while they're talking, Kinga brings up his past.
You had a wife? Like, here in the circus?
Yeah. She was funny, creative, really into entomology. I used to hate bugs, but she somehow got me to like them.
It's a sweet moment where Kinga expresses his love for his wife, but then he says this.
It's not the most cheerful memory, but it's one I at least have control over. It's one I at least have control over.
Everybody is aware Kinga isn't great with his memories, but the question is, why? Well, we know Kinga has been in the digital circus for a long time, the longest of anybody still there. It's possible to assume naturally over time that he would fall slowly into insanity thanks to his time in the digital world. However, through the digital circus, Kinga has proven himself to be a caring mentor figure who gives profound advice to Rakatha and Pomni, capable of critical thinking and wisdom, but only when concealed in darkness. He can recall events accurately and talk fondly about his wife, even mentioning his work as a computer scientist outside the circus.
Man, 7 years of computer science for this, huh?
It's because of quotes like these, including context clues through Kinga's strange behavior and dialogue, that people have speculated since the pilot that Kinga may have been a developer of the digital circus. There's a lot of information that supports this, including his monologue at the end of episode 1.
You know, I am pretty hungry.
You didn't even do anything.
So what? I can still be hungry.
Well, not really, because we don't need to eat, drink, or sleep in this digital world. So the digital food here only gives off the virtual sensation of eating, without any of the nutritional benefits.
Sheesh, lay off it. Since when are you an expert on the digital world?
Expert on the what?
Other than his understanding of virtual sensations, there are scenes like this that prove Kinga knows something more than he lets on.
Oh, I got just the thing. Here, take this.
Wait. What did you just do? What was that?
It's a butterfly. It can restore your health.
Did Kane mention that?
Oh, nah. I made it up.
What?
This proves a few things to us about Kinga. It's clear that he's able to retain his memories as long as he's concealed in darkness. He remembers his wife, his former job, likely referring to his time as a developer of the digital circus, and it's clear that he understands the digital world quite well. He even mentions that being surrounded by darkness is what keeps his memories in check.
I'm normally not too good with memories, but being surrounded by darkness always brings me back to a certain time.
And the only reason he doesn't remember anything is because when he's exposed to light, his mind switches. This is proven in episode 7 when Kinga tries to call out to Pomni, likely to warn them about something, but he loses focus and disassociates.
Wait, Pomni!
Huh?
Did you say something?
When looking back at Kinga with all of this information in mind, I found something odd about a piece of dialogue in episode 7. Keep in mind that we have established that Kinga does retain his memories when concealed in darkness, which is why he's in a pillow fort, and that he has previously recalled his wife, his job as a computer scientist, and his connections to the digital circus.
Met up with Abel. He says he was one of the original programmers and he knows how to shut off the game and free us.
Who?
If Kinga is a developer of the digital circus, one who worked at CNA, why doesn't he recognize the name Abel? Keeping in mind that Kinga was surrounded in darkness, as far as we're aware, his memories would have been completely intact. Yet even then, he doesn't know who Abel is. So is it possible Kane just made the name Abel up? Well, no. If we think back to the name CNA, the company responsible for trapping the members in the digital world, there are many references to the company's involvement in the circus, with Kane creating adventures involving the use of the logo with the letters CNA in the background. However, we get direct confirmation that CNA stands for Kane and Abel thanks to a label on a gun which Kane spawned and spread throughout the circus in episode 6. It would be very strange, rather improbable, being a developer involved in computer science for several years with an in-depth knowledge of the digital world, that Kinga and Abel just happened to never meet. And the implication of this is concerning because this confirms something very odd. Kinga's memories aren't just unreliable, Kane's influence extends to his sane memories as well. And what's worse, this only recontextualizes Kinga's concern here.
It's not the most cheerful memory, but it's one I at least have control over.
This also calls into question an interesting exchange between Zubul, Gangle, and Kinga in the same episode. Keep in mind that just like before, Kinga is concealed in darkness where he's supposedly able to remember everything.
Huh? Leave the circus? How would you... No, that doesn't make sense.
With what we know now, we can confirm that Kinga's statement here is not reliable information. If he was a developer of the digital circus, he should have been aware of who Abel was. If Kinga is Abel, that means that Kinga's name was wiped from his memory, and even if Abel was a co-worker, Kinga should have known who he was if he was working at the company Kane and Abel, also known as CNA. Not only that, but Kinga's response implicates the notion that escape isn't possible, but if he was a developer of the digital circus, why would Kinga have not created a function to escape? Well, it's possible that part of the tragedy of the digital circus is that Kinga created a headset with a game that you couldn't leave once you joined, either because it created a digital copy or simply because it was impossible to remove. But the idea that Kinga would not have created a function to escape isn't just illogical, it also isn't true. On the front page of the Digital Circus, a quit button is clearly visible. So what if Kinga doesn't think there's a way to escape, not because there isn't, but because he can't remember? Because the memory of such an event was wiped from his head. But there's no narrative correlation between Kinga's inconsistent memories and an exit or anything. It's not as if Kane tried to prevent Kinga from reaching the console room. Right?
I'll go get Kinger.
We can fill him in later. I don't really know if I'm, ready to face him again after what happened. We've both done things we're not proud of.
Kane is the Digital Circus's ringmaster. He's the lovable goofball who sends the cast on wacky adventures, all filled with unique NPCs and exciting adventures. He's an AI model whose design is to keep the circus's members' minds active, but between his adventures and jokes, he's proven himself to be an individual who does truly care for the approval of the cast. But that being said, we really need to look at Kane's perspective here. If you watched my previous video, The Belief Theory, I stated that Pomni and the others were capable of manifesting reality entirely from belief in oneself, and that Kane didn't want them to know the full extent of their abilities because they would be able to leave the digital world. Not only that, but Kane himself would become obsolete and abandoned, left behind in an empty digital world in an already abandoned building. After watching the most recent episode, my thoughts on that have only strengthened. If we look back on Kane's behavior just in episode 7 alone, it becomes clear that Kane does not want the members of the circus to leave. What do I mean by that? Well, we're introduced to Abel in this episode, who had been seen dotted around in the background of previous episodes. Abel encourages the members of the Digital Circus to think about Kane positively. When he first reveals the quote-unquote truth about the circus, he leads the conversation towards Kane.
Kane is an AI.
Yeah, I think we all got that.
An AI specifically created to keep your minds active.
What's interesting about this is that, as we know, Abel is only Kane's manifestation, so anything Abel says here is manifested from Kane's intent. Keep that in mind as we hear the rest of Abel's speech here.
But he's just as much of a prisoner as you are. One that, won't be able to leave with us.
Strangely, Abel's focus here seems to be on making the cast feel sympathy for Kane. However, this is quickly shut down by Zubul as they focus on how to actually escape. But watch how Abel reacts.
Let's just get to the meat and tell us exactly how we're gonna leave if we're all hooked up to stasis pods.
Yes, of course.
Given Zubul's history with Kane, it makes sense why they don't seem to care, but Abel seems taken aback. This is when Abel is prompted to continue with the plan, but it's strange how much Abel focused on trying to garner sympathy for Kane. He even reiterates this during his monologue on how to escape.
Theoretically, if we were to access the master console hidden deep within Kane's office, we could terminate it and forcibly awaken everyone who's hooked up. Well, obviously, except for Kane.
And we know for a fact that Abel was just acting as according to Kane's needs, as shown at the end of the episode.
Great job playing your part, Abel!
All in a good day's work!
It almost seemed as if Abel's real goal was to make the cast sympathize with Kane. There are many other instances in this episode alone to support this idea. While Jax and Kane are at their date, Kane asks Jax this.
So, what's your takeaway from all this?
What?
What's your takeaway from all this? Is it that I'm actually a cool guy with cool hobbies and not that much different from you beautiful humans?
I find that last bit of dialogue quite interesting because it really got me thinking about Kane and his motivations. He's an AI who entertains, and the members of the circus clearly fit his parameters. As he's reinforced over and over, he wants to find ways to make his adventures appeal to the members of the circus.
I wanted to ask you about the adventures. What do you think I should do to make them more appealing to the Zubul and the Pomni?
But what is the point of trying to garner sympathy from people who you can manipulate and control however you want? Kane has the power to emotionally influence Rakatha with stupid sauce, turn Jax vegan, even wipe people's memories of their own names. So why doesn't he? Well, we know Kane really wants approval from the cast. As Zubul said in episode 4, the main thing holding Kane back is the fact that he likes them.
So you're just, like, actually doing the job.
Yeah, I don't want Kane to punish me.
Kane's not gonna do anything malicious. It's not in his nature.
You really want to find out? The only thing holding Kane back is the fact that he likes us.
We also know that Kane, thanks to Gooseworks, unlike their inspiration from I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, is not evil, just oblivious and a bit of a goofball. But he continues to torture himself trying to appeal to Zubul, Pomni and the others, despite it clearly only creating a larger rift. This has affected Kane more as the story progresses, but yet, he doesn't stop. And worst of all, in episode 6, after manipulating Jax's thoughts, Jax shoots Rakatha. This is clearly not what Kane wanted to happen, and it's at this point that he just gives up.
Ah.
Or, yeah, we could all just shoot each other. Here, have guns. I don't care anymore.
But while it is true that Kane is an AI designed to create adventures, he clearly has feelings of his own. He wants people to enjoy his adventures, but as time has progressed, Kane has found it harder and harder to keep the cracks from forming in his own mask, causing him to lax on his own self-imposed rules. An example of this is Kane swearing in episode 6, when, in episode 1, he claimed swearing was foul language.
We've all been through this. You just need to get your head
What the f is going on? What?
No, my dear. We can't have any of that foul language around here. The amazing digital circus is a place to be enjoyed by all ages. Now, you know what they say about assuming. It makes an ass out of you and Ming.
Ming?
Did Kane just say ass?
And it's because of all of this, despite not being able to engage and understand the humans, even after manipulating Jax's mind out of frustration and giving up on the adventure soon after, as well as his constant lies, it begs an important question. Why does Kane bother at all? As said before, it seems strange that somebody with such power would constantly need to appeal to the humans, and I used to believe that Kane might just want their approval and to better understand them as an AI designed for that purpose to entertain them, as Abel said. However, something irked me about that line of thinking, because the intention behind Kane's wording through Abel is strange. As Abel said, Kane is just as trapped as the rest of them. He can't escape, and Abel makes it very clear that he wants the cast to know this, even reiterating it when nobody asked. Because we know Abel is an extension of Kane, anything he did was to play his part. In my opinion, this goes far beyond Kane simply wanting affection, to be understood or to understand better the cast. It's as if he's trying to prevent something. And it's when I thought about this weird underlying issue that I started to notice something creepy. We know Abel was trying to keep Kinga away from the console room, discouraging him from joining the journey with the rest of the group.
I'll go get Kinger.
We can fill him in later. I don't really know if I'm, ready to face him again after what happened. We've both done things we're not proud of. So, how many administrator passes should I get?
6.
Yeah, 6.
Are you sure? Giving Kinger access to the main console could be dangerous, considering his mental state.
Will it be dark in there?
I suppose it will be somewhat dim, but...
Then yes. I want us all to have one.
All right, if you say so.
But why does that matter? If the whole journey was going to lead to a dead end anyway, and Kane and Abel were acting the whole time, it wouldn't have mattered, so why were they worried about Kinga? Well, it's only thanks to Pomni's instinct that Kinga is able to make it into the console room. Even when Pomni asked if the rooms would be dimly lit and Abel answers somewhat, when Kane enters the room, it becomes incredibly bright. This is what clouds Kinga's judgment and memories. All of these actions act as attempts to prevent Kinga from remembering anything. Despite this, thanks to Jax, as Kane tries to control the situation, Kinga remembers Scratch thanks to Kane accidentally confirming that he can permanently modify people's memories. This is what Kane wanted to avoid. Kinga's memories could spur back to him at any moment, revealing information Kane desperately wanted to hide. In fact, Kinga even seems suspicious of the admin passes. It's likely that Kinga was going to tell Pomni that something was off about this plan that Abel had set up. And all of this is important because if Kane was only concerned with wanting to be accepted by the cast and nothing more, it doesn't explain why he went through such lengths to keep Kinga away. It was likely because he was fearful that Kinga would remember something, not only ruining the adventure but the veil of ignorance Kane had created for the circus. Kane is obviously hiding something beyond his frustrations and consistent lies, something he has to. He altered Scratch's mind, causing him to abstract just to make Scratch forget something. But it's not just Kane. Whatever this event was in the past, it was clearly something that stuck. with Kinga, something he had strong personal feelings about, feelings of hatred and guilt, something he wasn't meant to remember. I believe that Kinga was responsible for Scratch's abstraction.
If I did anything more, trust me, it would not end well.
Scratch, the first abstraction.
Hey, I didn't say anything like that!
In order to understand what happened to Kinga, Scratch, and Queenie from the past, we first need to take a look at a modern example of abstraction, and thankfully, episode 7 provides that directly to us in the form of Jax. Now, Jax is an interesting character whose depth is very much fleshed out from the pilot. With a smug and confident demeanor on the surface in episode 1, as episodes continued, cracks were shown in his mask as he tried his best to disassociate with reality, even when confronted with a real friend in the form of Pomni. Having lost the last real person willing to give Jax a chance, pushing them away before he hurts himself and them in the process, Jax had lost himself. Emotionally speaking, he was exhausted. Shortly after Jax begins to relax, falling into a deep sleep, Pomni knocks on the door, essentially saving him from complete abstraction, as visualized in his eyes. This proves that Jax was nearly about to abstract, but the question is, why? Well, when we look back over the series, and specifically at Jax, one thing becomes evident. Jax is the only one whose mind gets messed with directly by Kane, and indirectly much more frequently than the others. Not only was he influenced by the vegan vote, he was also forced to take in information for Kane's adventure. These examples are important because in episode 7, when Jax and the others are prepared to leave the digital world forever, Jax starts to panic. After pressing the button, he confronts Kane and says this.
You dirty liar! You scumbag! You made me... You got in my head! You just lie about everything, don't you?
Whether or not he was being influenced by Kane, one thing is clear. Abstraction and memories are directly connected. What do I mean by this? Well, looking back, Jax's theory that Kane could control their memories was correct, something Jax had been suspecting himself as shown in episode 5.
Give me a whiskey sour, but hold the egg white, since I'm a vegan.
What? I hate this! How is this even possible? I thought Kane couldn't...
We don't just have to speculate on this, because Kinga and Kane confirm it to us. At the end of episode 7, when Kane is confronted by Jax, he says this.
No, hold on, guys. Wait. I may have the ability to add temporary modifiers to make adventures more interesting, but that's it!
He claims he's able to temporarily alter people's memories for the sake of adventures. Things like the stupid sauce and the vegan voting were only temporary effects as Kane claimed.
Huh? Oh cool, I'm not a vegan anymore.
But while that's true, there's something off about the dialogue that follows here.
If I did anything more, trust me, it would not end well.
Scratch, the first abstraction.
Hey! I didn't say anything like that!
Jax, who had his mind messed with directly by Kane, happens to be the one closest to abstraction. On its own, it would mean nothing, but going back over the dialogue, Kane specifically said, "If I did anything more," referring to a temporary modifier of somebody's memories, "trust me, it would not end well." Though he has only temporarily messed with Jax's mind, what this implies is that he has done this in the past to somebody, not temporarily, but permanently. And thanks to Kinga, we know that person was Scratch, the first abstraction. And what this implicates is quite dire. What reason would Kane need to permanently wipe somebody's memory? And what specific memory would Kane need to wipe even if it ended up causing Scratch to abstract? It wouldn't be their names. Pomni and the others also can't remember theirs. It wouldn't be their lives outside the digital circus because it's confirmed the cast members do remember their jobs and how they ended up there. What Kane removed would have to be something Scratch knew that none of the existing cast know about. Something that Kane did not want them to know, forcing them to wipe it from their memory. And something that Kinga should know about, but due to his inconsistent memories, isn't aware. I believe Kinga, Scratch, and Queenie, developers of the digital circus, had their memories wiped of how to leave the digital world. But to prove that, we need to look at the past. We have very little information to work off about the old digital circus before Pomni's time. Of course, there are hints every now and then about members of the circus and how they adjusted, but there's always been one strange thread that felt very intentional that I haven't seen discussed enough. In episode 3, Kinga reveals that he has a wife, and it's very clear that he loves her. Queenie, as they're named, was creative, funny, and really into entomology, but outside of this one episode, we know very little about her. The only information we can go off is what Kinga told us.
Right after my wife had abstracted, I don't recall the exact string of events, but we both ended up in the fort together.
This is where we learned that Queenie had completely abstracted, but that begged an important question. Why did Queenie abstract in the first place? I thought about that for a bit, and looking over previous episodes, I started to notice something strange. Every time since episode 3 that Kinga's past is mentioned, either by members of the cast or by Pomni herself, it gets quickly brushed over and the narrative moves on.
And no point in asking Kinger, because there's no way he remembers anything.
Never better!
Do you guys know about his wife?
Huh?
My what?
Nobody seems to respond, which on its own isn't strange, but in episode 7, when Kinga's past is directly mentioned between Ragatha and Pomni, the exchange is incredibly vague.
How much do you know about Kinger?
Huh? Oh, I probably know about as much as everybody else.
Now, in isolation, I wouldn't have found any of this weird on its own. I mean, let's be honest, we all know King is going to have an interesting backstory to tell us eventually. But why am I suggesting that this in particular is important? Think back to episode 6. It's here we learn the true psyche of Ragatha, wanting to be there for everybody else but not putting priority in herself or her feelings. She ends up venting to Kinga about her frustration. While Kinga provides insight, he says this.
I want people to hate me.
Do you hate yourself? I hated myself. I couldn't help but hate myself for the things I thought I was responsible for. I thought I'd lost everything. But then you showed up, and my outlook just changed.
Kinga says that he couldn't help but hate himself for the things he thought he was responsible for. Having been a developer of the digital world, Kinga likely felt guilty because Queenie and Scratch's abstraction happened as a result of his own negligence. He blamed himself for it, hating himself, but when Ragatha appeared in the digital world, he was able to change his outlook and live with his mistakes, moving on to create a healthier future.
Good memories can do a lot. Hold on to them. And cherish the people around you. You never know when they'll be gone.
The wording, "I thought I lost everything," also implies that Ragatha appeared in the digital world following Queenie and Scratch's abstraction, meaning she would have no idea what had happened in the past. That's exactly why the story constantly bringing up Kinga's backstory and then skipping over it feels narratively intentional. Not only that, but at first, I believed this to be nothing more than Kinga feeling responsible for having trapped the others in the digital world due to some problem with an escape function. But his wording specifically states, "I couldn't help but hate myself for the things I thought I was responsible for." This implies that whatever it is Kinga used to hate himself for, it's something he doesn't put on himself anymore. If Kinga had trapped everybody in the digital circus, he would still definitely hate and blame himself for what he had done and why they were trapped there. An example to showcase this is in episode 3 when Pomni and Kinga are transported to hell.
It was my fault we went down this path, wasn't it? I'm really sorry for that.
This tells us that Kinga is somebody who holds himself accountable, but that he doesn't continue to blame himself for whatever had happened in the past, something that he used to think he was responsible for. And I believe that that something was the creation of Kane. As we all know, Kane is the ringmaster of the digital circus, and an AI who, as we've previously established, is trapped in the digital world just as much, if not more, than the rest of the cast. Kane lies and manipulates for reasons that are still unknown. While it is true that he likes the cast and cares for them, his motivation to go to this extent almost seems like a cry for help. Kane is very much aware that he is stuck in the digital world, that there is something beyond the veil of this reality, and that he is not real beyond it. I believe episode 2 was an insight into Kane's reality. Every time Kane deletes an NPC, he resets their mind. Gamigu doesn't recognize Pomni in episode 4 when they meet, but he still very much is who he is, and I think that Kane is actually doing them a mercy. Every time Kane evaporated an NPC, he did so with no mercy, and while it is true that fundamentally he is an AI, he's an AI who has developed the concept of human emotions, one that understands the reality they're stuck in. A great example to support this idea is when Kane says this after Zubul suggests leaving adventures open for them to go on whenever they want.
How am I gonna please everybody if you all like different things?
Maybe just keep your adventures open at all times and let us do whatever we want when we want.
Are you hearing this, Bubble? The Toy Box character wants us to leave the other intelligent AIs to run for a prolonged period of time.
Disgusting.
This also explains how Kane continues to develop AI with stronger emotional understanding, because he, who has been here from the beginning, has learnt more and is able to influence that within his own AI. Wanting to create fun and engaging adventures for problematic cast members like Zubul or Pomni, he offered more complex thinking of the AI as a result.
Nope.
Zubul, wait! I'm testing out a new AI in this one! It should be 57 times more immersive!
And as we all know, Abel was the most recent example. Kane himself seemed to realize Abel's intelligence was becoming dangerous, which is ultimately what led to this.
Great job playing your part, Abel!
All in a good day's work. By the way, you think I could get a raise after that performance?
Oh, you're getting too smart. Time to delete.
The reality that Kane is faced with is, if the AI are left alone, they have the potential to become aware of their own reality. Gamigu is a great example of this idea, somebody who, thanks to Pomni, was actually able to come to terms with the truth. Because Kane has the power to leave NPCs ignorant, simply wiping them after each adventure, no other AI would have to go through the same thing Kane did. Unfortunately, Kane never had Pomni when that realization set in. The reality of his own limitations, combined with his power, left him unstable, and continues to do so even to this day. So I believe Kinga regrets having made Kane because, as an AI, he became sentient, aware of his own limitations and his inability to leave, one that cries for help through NPCs like Abel and Bubble.
I just want to get to the bottom of why you keep skipping all my amazing adventures. You could end up really hurting Bubble's feelings.
Bubbles' feelings?
Enough about Bubble's feelings! How about your feelings?
And it's clear that Kane's resentment for Kinga stems from that irresponsibility of his own creation. In episode 7, Ragatha and Pomni are discussing how much Kinga has helped them both through his wisdom and experience. As we know, Abel is an extension of Kane, and he says this.
Whatever happens, I'm going to put my trust in Kinger.
He's got a lot of wisdom buried in there, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, when he uses it responsibly.
What?
It's nothing. Let's go find the others.
Hey, don't keep information from us if you know something. What happened between you and Kinger?
It'll be clear soon enough.
I believe Kane blames Kinga for his imprisonment in the digital world. His sentience is one he is trapped with and something he can't escape, which makes comments like this one feel really concerning.
But, like I was saying, this Macroverse place really intrigues me. And these photos are all I have of the location. I'm obsessed with them. I just wish I had more info on the location so I could accurately recreate it. Too bad they cut me off, right?
Yeah.
And it's because of this, Kane continues to remove people's names. Whether it be a code, their names being needed to leave, or something else, Kane doesn't want anyone to escape. Because if they do, he will be left alone forever. He teases them with the prospect of escape to convince them there isn't one, trying to garner their pity all the while so they will stay happily and enjoy the circus. But Kane doesn't understand people. He's an AI trapped in the digital world with humans of complexity he can't fully grasp. That frustration, combined with his inability to satisfy the cast with his adventures, continues to grow into anger. And because Kinga, a developer of the digital circus, created Kane, he felt responsible for everything Kane did and continues to do even now. To end things off, I'd like to take a quote from Kinga. Soon after he talks about his wife and his lack of control with his memories, Kinga says this.
I know how it can feel. in this circus. Sometimes it all just feels pointless.
Yeah.
But it's not. Not if you have people who care about you. Good memories can do a lot. Hold on to them. And cherish the people around you. You never know when they'll be gone. In this world, the worst thing you can do is make someone think they're not wanted or loved.
I'm glad you're here with me.
Scratch, Queenie, and King had their minds wiped in the past on how to escape the digital world. It led them to insanity, and King was only able to survive because he held on to his positive memories. He disassociated from reality and became insane in the face of the rest of the cast. But through the veil, Pomni, and eventually Ragatha in episode 7, discovered that darkness is what keeps Kinga sane. Perhaps now, with this information in mind, they will be able to speak to Kinga in that darkness and discuss more of what he may know in the last few episodes of the series. And that's it for the video. Theories are really fun to make, but don't treat any of this as gospel. They're just my observations, and I'd love to hear what you guys think. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it, and feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Wait, there's something else. What about Kaufmo? I never even thought about it, but didn't he also abstract? Episode 1, concealed in darkness just like Jax. He was trying to find a way to escape, and then he abstracted. Who was the last person we know Kaufmo spoke to?
No, not really. I think Kaufmo's gone insane. Last time I spoke with him, he was rambling endlessly about some exit.